Now initially we are going to recline that TE just about 2 degrees away from the vehicle, and then we will fully move the TE about 45 degrees away up at T0. And they're maybe a little hard to see on your screen, but the clamp arms are opening up there. There's a better view. Looks like the clamp arms are now fully open, so that TE will begin to move away from the vehicle. Very slow and slight, but just enough to get 2 degrees away from the vehicle.
And then coming up in less than 30 seconds at the T-minus 3 minute mark, the first stage liquid oxygen or LOX load will complete, and we'll continue to check through a couple more fueling milestones, including one around the T-minus 2 minute mark before flight, where we'll hear liquid oxygen loading is complete on the second stage. And now you see all of those white clouds on your screen. Those are clouds of vapor, and they're completely normal, and we'll see them continue to build up as we get closer to launch. This is because liquid oxygen is super chilled, so a little of it will boil off in the warmer Florida air.
Stage 1, LOX load complete.
Great call out there. Stage 1.
Count and on.
Putting liquid oxygen onto stage 2, and that'll wrap up here at the T-minus 2 minute mark, just about 20 seconds from now. And once we finish propellant loading, that will mean that 1 million pounds of RP1 and liquid oxygen will be loaded onto Falcon 9 here, just under 10 seconds.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
We just heard confirmation that the stage 2 liquid oxygen loading is now complete. We are under 2 minutes away from launch. Gas closeout has also begun. So we're now isolating all of the feed lines for the different gas systems from the Falcon 9 rocket. And those gases will then get vented overboard through umbilicals and the strong back. And you just heard that call out that Dragon is an
Ground
audit
gas
aisle.
closeouts, expect loud venting.
Well, you can hear that venting now. Obviously, rockets are very loud, and the sound can impart pressure loads back on the rocket itself. The ton of water absorbs and prevents the sound from hitting the structure and reverberating back onto the rocket. And that call out for auto idle puts the rocket in a state the flight computers understand before it takes over, making sure the transition to final countdown is smooth and all the flight computers on board are in sync and configured for launch.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And now we just heard that Falcon 9 is in startup.
Anything countdown.
And in the final countdown, less than a minute to go, and at the time of launch, the space station will be flying 260 statute miles over the west coast of Australia.
Dragon, SpaceX. Go for launch.
And great call out.
SpaceX, Dragon 310, copy, go for launch.
Great call out that we're go for launch, and we do have a large crowd here in front of Mission Control,
T-minus 30 seconds.
waiting to watch Crew 10 take off today.
T-minus 15. T-minus 10. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Go SpaceX, go NASA Crew 10. Copy, 1 Alpha.
And liftoff as Crew 10 now soaring to the International Space Station. 1.7 million pounds of thrust now propelling Falcon 9 and Crew 10. And we're continuing to get good call-outs on the first stage performance so far. We're now 40 seconds into today's flight.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Continuing to get good performance call-outs.
Throttle down.
Yeah, we are throttling down the engines in preparation for max Q. you. That's the largest structural load that the vehicle will see on Ascent.
Vehicle supersonic. Stage 1, throttle up.
We're now just over 1 minute and 10 seconds into today's flight, traveling at more than 1,400 miles per hour.
Stage 1 Bravo.
And we just heard that
SpaceX
call out
copies,
for 1 Bravo, which means we're in the second and final abort mode for the first stage, continuing to get good performance. And the crew already pulling over 2 Gs. Next up, we'll have a couple of events happening in rapid succession.
Back chill started.
First will be that engine chill on the second stage impact engine, which we just heard. And then we'll have MECO, or main engine cutoff, where the 9 engines on the first stage will cut off ahead of the first and second stages. Will be separating from one another. Then the single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite and continue to carry Crew 10 to orbit while the first stage begins its journey back to Earth. Now we're just 2 minutes into today's flight. The vehicle is traveling just under 4,000 miles per hour.
We're just about 20 seconds away from those events that Anna just mentioned. The 9 Merlin engines will shut down here in just about 10 seconds for MECO, stage separation, and SES-1.
Main engine cutoff.
SpaceX Dragon, 2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed.
Copy, 2 Alpha.
Great call-outs and incredible views there on your left-hand screen. On your left-hand screen, you can see a view from stage 1. And an extremely excited crowd here in Hawthorne. Awesome views of that boost back burn on the first stage, as well as the MVAC engine igniting on the second stage. Great views there. Now the booster is in its boost back burn. This is the first of 3 burns as it makes its way back down to Earth. This will last about 45 seconds. And the crew, 10 crew, is still on board Dragon attached to Falcon 9 second stage, which you can see there on your right-hand screen.
And we're now at 3 minutes and 20 seconds into today's flight. The vehicle is traveling about 6,500 miles per hour. And they are on their way to the space station. And we did have that confirmation coming up of the boost back shutdown. And then coming up at the T plus 6 minute mark. And there we have our first images of the crew inside the Dragon spacecraft as they make their way into orbit. And the crew
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
continuing to get good call-outs.
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
The stage 2 continues to be on power with in its firing until we get to that second stage engine cutoff around the 9-minute mark of flight. About 5 minutes of flight to go before Dragon will be flying free.
Some cool views there on your left-hand screen. That's the first stage booster as it's making its way back down to Earth. This is a ground tracking camera getting these awesome views.
And on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see that lone Merlin vacuum engine of the second stage. We're continuing to get good performance on the second stage. And the crew's G-loads will dip right when we hit the separation events, and it's going to continue to build up until then.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
We're now at 5 minutes into today's flight with a liftoff at 7:03 p.m. Pacific, 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific. Continuing to get good call-outs as Stage 1 makes its way back to Earth, and Stage 2 continues to fire, propelling Dragon into orbit.
If you're just now joining us, the 4 members of Crew 10 launched from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and they're currently on board Dragon, still attached to Falcon 9 second stage, which you're seeing there on your right-hand screen. On your left-hand screen, the first stage vehicle is making its way back down to Earth. It already completed the first of 3 burns as the boost back burn, and the next event coming up for that vehicle is going to be the entry burn.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Great call-outs there. That entry burn is coming up.
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
That entry burn is coming up here in just under 20 seconds. We'll reignite 3 of those 9 Merlin 1D engines to help slow the vehicle down as it makes its way back into the Earth's atmosphere.
We're now just over 6 minutes into today's flight as Dragon and the second stage continue traveling at over 12,000 miles per hour, making their way into orbit and on the way to the International Space Station.
There, we just saw on the screen, it was very quick, but we had the entry burn, which we got some cool views of that from the ground, which is awesome. Now the next event coming up will be the landing burn for the first stage. That's coming up here in about 30 seconds.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Again, great call outs for
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
Confirmation there from the crew as they continue to make their way into orbit. Now 7 minutes into today's flight, the first stage making its way back down to Earth and the second stage continuing to fire.
This is an awesome view. Let's see if we can see the center engine relight for that landing burn here in a few seconds. There's that landing burn. Let's watch as Falcon 9 touches down on landing zone 1. And the crowd here is excited to see Falcon 9 touch down on landing zone 1.
And now that the first stage has made its way back to Earth, we're about a minute away from the second engine cutoff, which we're expecting around the 9-minute mark of today's flight. We're continuing to get good call-outs, and Dragon and all of the systems on the vehicle are performing as expected. Just over 8 minutes into today's flight, traveling more than 21,000 miles per hour.
Terminal guidance.
Hearing good call-outs. We're about 30 seconds away from that second engine cutoff, and then shortly after that, about a minute or so later, we will have orbital insertion.
SpaceX Dragon, Shannon.
SpaceX copy, Shannon.
And that call out there for Shannon, and that is the call out for Shannon, Ireland, which is the final abort stage for the second stage off the coast of Ireland. Standing by for a second engine cutoff.
Impact shutdown.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
And there we heard confirmation
Walk escape system disarmed.
Good confirmation of orbital insertion. Crew 10 is now well on their way to the International Space Station following a 9.5-minute flight uphill.
Now, the second stage is preparing for Dragon separation here, which should happen shortly, in about 10-15 seconds is what we're expecting. Now we're preparing for stabilizing the second stage so that we can have a smooth separation.
And there you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, the crowd is going wild. There on your screen you can see that Dragon separation, that second stage making its way, and Dragon is now flying free. 10 minutes into today's flight, that was about a minute after we had that second engine cutoff and orbital insertion. And it looks like a good separation, good rates. Dragon now flying free. There on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see some first images of Crew 10 inside the Dragon Endurance spacecraft as they're now successfully in orbit.
Dragon, SpaceX, Chief Engineer on Countdown 1. On behalf of the entire Falcon team, we thank you for flying with Falcon and wish you a great mission. Over to LD.
It was an honor flying with you this evening. We wish you well on your journey and give Crew 9 our best. Thank you for flying SpaceX.
SpaceX Dragon, this is Crew 10 Commander Ann McLean. Thank you to all of the teams from across the world who contributed to the launch today. Spaceflight is tough, but humans are tougher. Days like today are made possible only when people choose to do the harder right over the easier wrong. Build relationships, choose cooperation, and believe in the inherent goodness of all people across the world. To my family and friends, without you, I would not be here. Explore boldly, live gracefully, go Crew 10. And over to pilot Nicole Ayers.
Nicole Ayers again. We're not the first humans to get to orbit, and we wouldn't be here without the bravery and hard work of those who have paved the way for human spaceflight. We now get the unique perspective of Earth without borders and get to revel in the connectedness of humanity. I would be remiss to not once again acknowledge those who helped me get here, to this wonderful view and this perspective, to the teachers, coaches, fellow officers, fellow teammates, Raptor Nation, to my friends and family that encouraged my dreams from the start. Thank you. I wouldn't be here without you.
This is Mission Specialist Takuya Onishi. I want to say a huge thank you to NASA and SpaceX, especially the Falcon 9 team for the successful launch, and we are looking forward to a smooth ride to the International Space Station. 日本の皆さん、たくさんの応援ありがとうございます。9年ぶりの無重力の感覚をかみしめてます。これから先の ISS への宇宙の旅、楽しんでいきたいと思います。I will now hand the mic over to Mission Specialist Kirill.
Thanks a lot to NASA and SpaceX for this wonderful ride, and I want to say a couple of words in Russian. Пользуясь такой чудесной возможностью, хочу поздравить с 65-летием со дня начала подготовки первого отряда. И также хочу сказать спасибо большое за те знания и жизненный опыт, который мной были получены в тех стенах для того, чтобы выполнить этот полет. А также спасибо школе номер 14 города Назарова, Ульяновскому высшему авиационному училищу гражданской авиации и авиакомпании МКАР и Нордвин, где я начинал свой путь в небо. И, конечно же, спасибо большое семье и за поддержку.
Thank you, Crew 10. At this time, I can report nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
SpaceX Dragon, copies.
And such great words from Crew 10, as well as the core here in Hawthorne and Mission Control. We also got confirmation that the nose cone deploy is underway. The 6 hooks that hold the nose cone in place during the launch and ascent portions have to retract, and then the nose cone will be able to start to swing open and deploy. Now, this uncovers a number of critical systems for the flight up to the space station, including the forward bulkhead thrusters and the docking hatch. Just pausing in case there were going to be any comms. And we did have good confirmation, good checkouts of the 12 Draco thrusters around the service section. Now, 4 to go after we get the nose cone open and then the ECLIS, the environmental control and life support system, activated inside of Dragon. Now, soon the crew will be able to get their visors open and get out of their suits and settle in for the ride to the space station.
And now we're just waiting for confirmation that the nose cone has fully deployed with all of the hooks open. But just to recap a little bit, we did have a successful liftoff of Crew 10 about 18 minutes ago at 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific. And following an approximately 9-minute ride after liftoff, we had that orbital insertion, and Dragon and Crew 10 were flying free and well on their way to the International Space Station. They now have an approximately a 28-hour journey before they do reach their destination of the space station, and that docking is targeted for tomorrow, March 15th at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, 11:30 p.m. Eastern, to the forward-facing port of the station's Harmony module. Between now and then, Dragon will perform a series of burns as it catches up to the space station, and that first burn will be a phase burn about 30 minutes from now at 4:52 p.m. Pacific, 7:52 p.m. Eastern.
And the nose cone is about 75% open at this point. Human spaceflight has come so far in the last 5 years with Dragon. In addition to flying people, SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft also enables researchers the opportunity to fly critical science to orbit. And so far, SpaceX and Dragon have carried over 1,000 research experiments to and from low Earth orbit, both to the International Space Station and on our free flyer missions. From DNA sequencing to 3D printing studies enabled by Dragon and the space station tests Dragon and the space station test a variety of technologies, systems, and materials that will be needed for future long-duration exploration missions. Now, every mission yields critical science and research and learnings that help make life both on Earth and in space better. And flights like today's help us continue to lay this foundation for our future among the stars and continue our mission to make life multiplanetary.
Once Crew 10 does arrive to the International Space Station, they will, of course, partake in some additional science and research. They will have over 200 experiments that they will contribute to during their time aboard the International Space Station. Again, we're just standing by for confirmation that that nose cone has fully deployed. And we may also get some additional look inside the cabin of the crew.
As we patiently wait for those views, we are trying to see if we can get some views. We were seeing some views from the second stage. This looks like it might be a view from the forward.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal nose cone opening and forward bulkhead Draco checkouts.
SpaceX Dragon copies and confirm nominal ECLIS activation and go for visors.
And there we heard confirmation that the nose cone has fully deployed and that the crew is now able to lift their visors. And there, again, we're seeing some views inside the Dragon Endurance spacecraft with Crew 10 on their way to the International Space Station.
Affirm, you are go to open visors.
Copy.
Great calls there. They're go to open visors, which means that shortly they'll also be able to get out of their suits and get comfortable for the entire ride on Dragon to the International Space Station.
And from left to right on your screen, there's Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers, NASA astronaut Anne McClain, and then far on the right-hand side of your screen is JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi.
And there you can see that they are in microgravity as their tablets are floating around there. They do have them attached to a little string that helps allow them so that, you know, as they're strapped into their seats, they don't lose their tablets.
We're now just over 20 minutes into today's flight following that successful liftoff at 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific. There you're getting an over-the-shoulder view between the commander and pilot, so Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers.
If you're just now joining us, you are watching live Crew 10 out in space in the Dragon vehicle. They lifted off from Space Launch Complex 39A at 7:03 p.m. Eastern Time.
Dragon SpaceX, there are about 3 minutes remaining in the current ground station pass. At this time, you're welcome to introduce your zero-G indicator. We're using the full crew cam so we can see all 4 crew members right now.
All right, copy. Thank you, SpaceX. We'd like to introduce the Crew 10G indicator. Takuya is holding him up. This is a hand crochet origami crane. It's a Japanese origami, hand crocheted in the United States, and his name is Drug, which is the Russian name for friend. Origami is the Japanese art of folding paper. This is a nod to the unique and deep cultural traditions from which each of us come. While we're from different parts of the world, we are brought together in this bold endeavor, and we represent all of humanity. The folded paper design was also chosen to represent paper airplanes that we made when we were kids, before we were astronauts, when all we had was a dream. And we looked up at the sky and we wondered, what if? It's a symbol that every big accomplishment starts with a quiet dream, and that dreams do come true when you believe in yourself and you listen only to those who believe in you. Crew 10 believes in all of the dreamers. The flag and the number markings on the crane, there's a number 10 on each of its wings and a flag from each one of our countries on the tail. This is a nod to each of our shared experiences as professional pilots. These patches are arranged to look like an airplane. This is a source of deep pride for our crew, because what pilot doesn't like to talk about the fact that they're a pilot? But this also symbolizes our shared culture as astronauts. In the years of training together, we found we have far more in common than we do different. Our zero-G indicator was handmade by a small business owner in the United States. This represents all the hands which created our entire space program, and this rocket and this capsule that we're flying today. It also represents all of the artists and musicians who inspire people to imagine beyond what they can see. Spaceflight is perhaps the most complex endeavor of our time, but it was built one step at a time, by one person at a time. Finally, the origami crane is the international symbol for peace, hope, and healing. Crew 10 hopes to serve as a beacon of hope, a reminder of what humans can accomplish when we see the goodness in one another, and we choose to work together toward a common goal. Today, we are united not through common enemies, but through shared optimism and a basic belief in the goodness of humanity. It is far easier to be enemies than it is to be friends. It's easier to break partnerships and relationships than it is to build them. Spaceflight is hard, and success depends on leaders of character who choose the harder right over the easier wrong, and who build programs, partnerships, and relationships. We explore for the benefit of all. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, then go together. Crew 10 chooses to go together in peace, because you cannot be great without the greatness of others. Go NASA, go Roscosmos, go JAXA, and go Crew 10.
Dragon SpaceX, we really appreciate those words, Ann. Thanks for introducing.
From NASA astronaut and the Crew 10 commander, Ann McClain. And again, Crew 10 comprised of McClain along with NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers and JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi along with Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov are now safely in orbit following an approximately 9-minute ride after a liftoff at 4:03 p.m. Pacific, 7:03 p.m. Eastern from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The crew now has an approximately 28-hour journey ahead of them before they reach their destination. the International Space Station. Again, docking is targeted for tomorrow, March 15th at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, 11:30 p.m. Eastern to the forward-facing port of the station's Harmony module. Between now and then, Dragon will perform a series of burns to catch up with the space station, and that first burn will be taking place around 4:52 p.m. Pacific, 7:52 p.m. Eastern today.
And those were some great words about the zero-G indicator. Very incredible. Human spaceflight has come so far in the last 5 years with Dragon. In addition to flying people, SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft also enables researchers the opportunity to fly critical science to orbit. Now, so far, SpaceX and Dragon have carried over 1,000 research experiments to and from low Earth orbit, both to the International Space Station and on our free flyer missions. From DNA sequencing to 3D printing, studies enabled by Dragon and the space station test a variety of technology, systems, and materials that will be needed for future long-duration exploration missions. Every mission yields critical research and learnings that help make life both on Earth and in space better. And flights like today's help us continue to lay the foundation for our future among the stars and continue our mission to make life multiplanetary. Now, we'll be signing off from SpaceX for now, so we're going to send it back to NASA. But before we go, we want to thank NASA for entrusting us with today's mission, and thank you all for being here with us today.
And with that, we're going to end our coverage from Hawthorne until we pick back up with our docking coverage in about 26 hours at 6:45 p.m. Pacific, 9:45 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, March 15th, for that targeted docking to the International Space Station at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, 11:30 p.m. Eastern. So for now, thank you for joining us, and back over to you, Jessica and Daryl at the Kennedy Space Center to wrap up today's coverage.
And welcome back to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where we just watched Crew 10 lift off from Launch Pad 39A. The crew is now en route to the International Space Station. I'm Daryl Nail. This is NASA astronaut Jessica Meir, who just watched one of her close friends and many friends, Crew 10, go up into space. And I'm wondering what that moment was like for you.
Well, I will tell you, it is a moment that you never forget. I am so excited right now sitting here thinking especially of Nicole and Kirill, because that first time experiencing prolonged weightlessness is something that they will never forget, and they will be talking about it for years and years for the rest of their lives, just like I recounted my stories here tonight. Those words were all so inspirational as well. I love how they unveiled their droog, their origami crane. It really hit on so many important themes tonight, talking about this Japanese art of folding paper, really combining all of the cultures of their crew, the name being a Russian name meaning friend, the origami crane for Japanese culture, all of the flags on the crane handmade by a small business in the U.S. It really highlights so many important elements that I know are so important to the crew and to all of us at NASA and all of the space agencies. Ideally, really in summary, highlighting the representation of peace, of hope, and of healing, and that we are all truly stronger when we work together. So thank you, Anne. Thank you, Crew 10, for those incredible words. I think that there's a lesson there for all of us tonight. We are exploring for the benefit of all.
And Crew 10 believes in all dreamers. Thank you for highlighting the words of Commander Ann McClain as well. Crew 10 will become part of Expedition 73, briefly with 72, but then 73 when they arrive on the space station. NASA's Megan Cruz joins us now with Megan Everett, Deputy Chief Scientist of the International Space Station.
That's right, two Megans here, and I want to talk to you about, we obviously have another crew en route to the space station. How is the research that's done on the ISS different from other research at NASA?
Yes, well, first, thank you for having me. It's always my pleasure, and I'm very grateful to get to talk about science in space. And so, like you said, the space station is a national laboratory, and it allows us to look at things in microgravity for extended periods of time. We can put things on the outside of the space station where they experience extreme temperature changes and exposure to radiation in that extreme environment. And we also get these very unique perspectives of the Earth's surface. And so together, these things allow us to look at things like theories in quantum physics and answer questions that we can't answer with laboratories on Earth. We can look at human health and how that we can get astronauts to explore beyond low Earth orbit, as well as promote human health and answer questions related to diseases that we can't do on Earth. And it also allows us to expand commercialization in low Earth orbit by some of our in-space manufacturing. And in addition to this, it's just this really cool collaboration of international partners and scientific cooperation that we see on the space station.
Yeah, obviously a unique platform, and we do all that we can to really utilize it. So how does what we learn on the space station help us here on Earth? Can you give us some examples about that?
Yes, I love that question because one of NASA's big mission objectives is to figure out how we can do science in space to promote human health here on Earth. And one of the things we've been really successful with on ISS is looking at stem cell research and organelles and how those relate to specific diseases like cancer. And we also look at protein crystallization, and so we can grow very uniform crystals in space better than we can on Earth. And these crystals are really important in pharmaceutical drug development. So together we can look at disease progression and how we can better treat those diseases with new pharmaceuticals in space.
That's great. You did also mention human health and researching, what it could mean if we go farther and farther into the universe. How are we doing on that research? What are we learning?
So we've used ISS as a test bed for exploration beyond low Earth orbit for a long time, and we continue to use that, and we will all the way through end of station. And some of the specific things that we look at are how the human responds to long duration exposure to gravity. So we look at exercise countermeasures, at how we can maintain muscle and bone strength. We look at things like food systems for how we keep crew healthy for long periods of time. We have a very robust plant growth program, so we try to optimize crop output by changing things like soil and water exposure to those plants. And we need life support systems for our crew to live in space for long periods of time, so we have a lot of technical demonstrations on the space station looking at how to clean air and water and eliminate waste.
I can really see that you love talking about this. Thank you so much for sharing your passion and for sharing all that's being accomplished through NASA with the research at the ISS, but also other research that we do here.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. All right, back to Daryl and Jessica.
All right, thank you very much, and we're about to wrap up coverage here, so why don't we take one last social question from one lucky submitter. Scarlett Sermons asks, how do the astronauts feel looking at Earth from above, and what's that feeling like coming back?
Well, seeing the Earth from above is a very, very exceptional experience, and it's something that I think changes you forever. People have different things to say about this, but I think one message that we do all share is that it gives you this unique understanding for how beautiful our planet is, but mostly how unique and fragile it is. You see this beautiful gem below you and this tiny, tiny band, this thin, tenuous band of an atmosphere that's really supporting all life, and you realize that we need to take care of this planet, that it is one planet and we have to protect it. Secondly, one thing that I really was struck by was seeing how interconnected everything is. You see all of the land masses with no boundaries, you see all the continuous oceans, and you realize how connected everything is, how we really are just one human. We are all here together, in it together as one. It's easy.